Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/spookshow. Then go over to morbidlybeautiful.com as we are now part of the Morbidly Beautiful Podcasting Network. Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the All-American Spookshow podcast. I'm Josh and I'm joined here with Tiana.
Hey.
And the Professor Smoke.
What's up?
Donnie couldn't be with us and as pretty much per usual lately, Will's not here, but it was, regardless of them being here, it was my pick. So I'm glad that at least the three of us got to see this movie again because I feel like this is probably not necessarily forgotten, but just kind of pushed to the side a little bit, as time has gone on. The way I look back on it is even when it came out, it was one of my favorites of the time. And, even looking back on the decade, because this came out in 2007, it's probably, in my opinion, one of the better ones of that decade, the 2000s. And we're going to be talking about 30 Days of Night. So I assume this is one we've all seen a number of times before, right? So we'll get into our histories with it in just a second. But before we dive into that, I want to go ahead and remind you to go check out aaspookshow.com. That's the center of the Spook Show universe. And from there, you can go listen to our past podcast archives. And, of course, check out our YouTube channel where every month we've got series like Grindhouse Gutter, Video Vortex, Hammer Horror and Order going on over there. So you don't want to miss a thing. And also, we welcome you to become a patron of the Spook Show by going to patreon.com/aaspookshow. And if you join at certain levels, I think it's at least $5 a month, just a little bit to help us out. You'll get access to Crapster Peace Theater every month. Good God. Every month it just gets worse than the last. And and of course, you get video minisodes, including the Library of the Professor, where Professor Smoke will take something from his vast library and talk about it. So that's always a good time. Lots of fun to be had there and other bonus stuff. So you want to check that out at patreon.com/aaspookshow. And like I said, just go check everything out there on aaspookshow.com. We would appreciate it. So without any further build-up, we'll go ahead and toss to the trailer for 30 Days of Night.
Copy that.
Board the windows. Try to hide. They're coming.
They? Who are they?
Vampires, you know?
Vampires don't exist, Jake.
weather. That's death approaching.
They're tearing through everyone's home.
We can last a month.
All right, there you go. That's the trailer for that. So, yeah, like I went and saw this at the theater back then when it came out. What about you guys? Do you recall seeing it at the theater a little after that? What's your experience with it, Tiana?
I'm theater. I did not see it in the theater. I saw it first hit home video, I guess, back then, 2000, whatever, 8, or whichever year it came out. Whether it was 7 or 8 on home video. I mean.
I'm kind of surprised by that. It seems like something that would have tickled your fancy a little bit, but I guess it was modern stuff, so you're like, I don't know.
No, I mean, I don't know if it was just that I'd already read the graphic novel, the first one anyways, or, that set of, or the graphic novel that was from the set of comic books, whatever. And I don't know if maybe you know how that goes. Somebody, you see something somewhere. That's why I don't really pay attention now to any reviews or whatever before I go see a movie, especially if it's something based on a pre-existing franchise or something like that nature, because I think there was some talk of it being, as anything is, it can't be exact to the comic or to it's being adapted from the novel, right? So, but there was a lot of like some maybe not a lot, but some negative talk on as far as it not translating over exactly as the graphic novel, and so maybe that influenced me not going to see it back then. But I mean, I wish I had.
Yeah, I mean, like. Honestly, and me being a big comic book guy, believe it or not, I've never actually read the comic. I've seen it. I've seen it around.
The other one's beyond the first set, Yeah,
I mean, I've seen it around, obviously, and I've even met Steve Niles, but I've never sit down and read it.
Yeah.
And I actually meant to go back, because I knew I was going to be picking this one, and I meant to go back, and I just never got an opportunity before we recorded to go check it out. Because I don't think it's a long read, right? It's only like a few issues, I think.
No, not long. And I wouldn't be able to go now seeing it and compare it, because the last time I read that was back a few years or so before the movie came out. So that's which was, I don't know, 2005, 6, whatever it was that I read. That's the last time I read that comic. So I wouldn't be able to necessarily even compare it now myself to how well it was. I know that there's differences, some parts that were cut out, that some characters that were not even in the movie that were in the comic book, but they have to do, they got to make certain sacrifices, I guess, when it comes to making a movie out of any adaptation of a movie. So.
Yeah, 30 Days of Night, the original comic book miniseries was only 3 issues, and it was written by Steve Niles, and it was illustrated by Ben Templesmith, and it was published by IDW Publishing, and it came out in 2002.
Yeah.
So it's been 22 years since that comic came out, and then it took them that long just to develop this movie.
Yeah, and it was like I said, I would like to see it in the theater, because when I did see it, I was pleasantly surprised by it. Like I said, it's well, for one thing, like the comic and the movie itself, the setting of it is something I love, which is like an isolated location, especially if it's dealt with like in the ice and snow, like The Thing or whatever. That's just a personal favorite of mine, is something set like that. I mean, it's the whole, what do you call it? Not just isolation, but claustrophobic setting.
Yeah.
Like Alien, for instance, or whatever, stuff like that. So that type of setting is right up my alley anyway. So I don't know. I let it influence me, I guess, and I just never went and saw it in the theater when it came out. So checking myself now.
I remember it being
great theatrical.
I remember it being one at the time. I was kind of like, in premise alone, this sounds awesome. So I was looking forward to it. And then when I saw it, I was like, yeah, this, to me, it delivered. That's at the time. Yeah. Now we'll see what we all think of it now, 15 or how many ever years ago or later it is now. We'll see what we feel about it now. But at the time I was like, yeah, this hits everything kind of I wanted it to be. And the other thing that stuck out in my mind about it, just before I even sat down and watched it again for this time around, was how gory it was. It was gorier than I thought that it would be, for like a major release, right?
Yeah, and this is only for me. I think it's the second time I've seen it. How many times have you seen it? A few. It's not. I haven't seen it more than 3. This is only the second time, but maybe I saw it the third. 3 times. Maybe I saw it twice back then when it came out or something on video. But yeah, it's been a long time for me since the last time I seen it. So yeah, I was pretty pleasantly surprised by the amount of gore that was in there too, especially some of the beheading scenes.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And we'll get into that for sure. But yeah, like those were the things that kind of stood out to me back then. As takeaways, that like it was way gorier than I thought it would be, especially for a lot of movies at the time. Didn't not to say that there weren't gory movies, there definitely were, but like the bigger release movies didn't usually go to the places that they went to in this movie, right? Of the time.
No, and it's hard for me to even remember of that time what was in 2003, 4, 5, 6, 7. I mean, I know Dawn of the Dead, the remake, was in there. 2000, whatever that was, 3. Was that 2007?
There were some that like every once in a while you'd get one like that, like the remake of Dawn of the Dead and stuff like that. But you're still in the middle of that damn House of Wax period. It's kind of the way I think. I
was gonna say, and the not William Castle, but the Dark Castle that were kind of like influenced by William Castle, the 13 Ghosts remake, and what was the other one? There was House on Haunted Hill. That era.
So, you're in the middle of that ghost ship era, right? Where it was hit or miss, right? You didn't know what you were going to get. It probably wasn't going to be very good, 50-50, and it probably wasn't going to be massively gory. It'd have moments, but it wouldn't be massively gory. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, they would have those. For me, Ghost Ship was the very intro scene.
Yeah,
it had that amazingly graphic scene, like oh shit, and then after that it was what it was. It wasn't terrible. I didn't think it was okay, but yeah, it had that ultimate scene, and then all those other movies too. It had like that moment or 2 moments or 3. It's like oh shit, but
on the flip side you're also in that era where there's the Hostel movies, the Saw movies. So like you would definitely get it from time to time. It just seemed to kind of be hit or miss, back then. Like and for every one of those, there'd be like 10 shitty movies. You were kind of in that era.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, anyways, let's go ahead and dive into some of the background info for this one. It debuted October 16th, 2007 at the Screamfest Horror Film Festival, but actually released wide a few days later on October 19th, 2007. It was produced by Columbia Pictures, Ghost House Pictures, and Dark Horse Entertainment, and it was distributed by Sony Pictures Releasing. Of course, if you've watched it, and like we've already talked about here, it's rated R. Total runtime it's a little on the long side for a movie like this for sure. 1 hour and 53 minutes. On IMDb, it's listed as an action horror thriller, and it was actually filmed in Auckland, New Zealand from, this is weird, August 14th through October 23rd. So you're thinking like, you'd want to be more dead of winter. But then again, Australia, different hemisphere, right? Maybe it might have been colder down there at that point.
Yeah. Actually, I think it is in the southern hemisphere.
Australia,
where
New Zealand,
it's flipped with the winter and summer.
Yeah. So we're in that American frame of mind there. But yeah, August 14th through October 23rd of 2006 when they filmed it, for a budget of $30 million, but it went on to a worldwide gross of $75.5 million. So I'd say pretty successful on that front, especially, for modern horror, right? Where it's, well, really horror in general. Like, when we look at these box office numbers, most of them usually don't make a lot of money. Every once in a while, you'll be like, there's It or Godzilla, some of the Godzilla movies or something, right? But for the most part, these don't break the bank. I think usually where horror movies make money is that they're cheaper to make. So they make more money that way. But this one having a budget of $30 million is on the high end for the types of movies that we talk about for sure. But to that, the box office. I've got the top 10 in the box office that weekend. Number 10. So this is the weekend of October 19th through the 21st of 2007. So this is what you would have been going to see around Halloween, right before Halloween, 2007. Number 10, Across the Universe. Number 9, Elizabeth, The Golden Age. Number 8, The Heartbreak Kid. Number 7, in its first week of re-release, The Nightmare Before Christmas 3D release. I guess also you're in that 3D friggin' era where every other movie was getting re-released in 3D or a 3D release, right?
Yeah.
Number 6, We Own the Night. Number 5, in its opening weekend, The Comebacks. Number 4, Michael Clayton. Number 3, The Game Plan. Number 2, Why Did I Get Married? And number 1, in its opening weekend, 30 Days of Night, made $15.9 million, so you might as well call it $16 million in its opening weekend. So it's not bad. And it probably did pretty well for the next couple of weeks, right, with this time period. I would imagine it played pretty well throughout Halloween into November. So why's release time there?
For me, why I didn't see that many movies back then, because I don't remember any of those he's mentioned, other than, of course, A Nightmare Before Christmas, of course.
Yeah, there's
I don't think I saw any of those other ones.
Yeah, as I'm reading that, it's like there's not many of these I remember. I remember some of the titles, but I don't think I've seen many of those. You know.
Yeah, I definitely remember a couple of the titles. Some of the titles I don't even remember, but
yeah,
I know I didn't see any of those movies except Nightmare Before Christmas, which wasn't in that age range.
But to be fair, you're in that slow time of year, right? Like usually the end of summer, like usually by August or September, that there's usually about a month and a half or so of kind of crappy movies. You know, sprinkle in a few good ones every now and then, but for the most part, since all the kids go back to school here in the U.S. at that time period, they don't really release the big ones until you get to Halloween and then the holidays, you know. But so you're in that time frame. But yeah, there you go. That's the top 10 in the box office that weekend in 2007. There was it's kind of turned into a franchise. There was another movie. But before we get to that one, we'll point out there was a prequel. We'll call it a TV series, but it didn't really air on television. This is back in the early days of like putting shit on the web, you know, series and stuff. So there was a prequel series that came out literally like right before this release in theaters on FearNet. Is FearNet still a thing, like the website or something? I remember that being a thing back.
Sure. I don't know if that does still exist.
I have no idea. Maybe it does in some form. You know how this shit gets bought by another company that buys another company. It's like the bigger shark buying the whale, you know, eating the whale or whatever the hell. But,
yeah.
But there was a prequel series called 30 Days of Night Blood Trails. And that literally came out like over the course of like a couple weeks or something that led up to the release of this movie. And it was supposed to set the stage of the story. Now, I'd never seen it, so I went back and watched it before I watched the movie. It is not good. I'll say that. Now, it's also not even like what you would call a full-fledged series. It was like, you know, back then where a lot of things were only released in like, say, 2 to 4 minutes long. It's like that. It's like 7 or 8 2 to 4 minute long little clips that eventually got edited together to make like a 30-minute long thing, right? Like you can find it on the web, on YouTube or whatever now. But it was kind of edited together to make legitimately like it's like watching an episode of a show is what it ends up being, because it's only like maybe 25-30 minutes long, you know, put together. But really the only connection of this whole thing to the movie is the fact that they at the end of this thing, spoiler alert, they connect that the vampires are apparently have been living in the New Orleans area. And now they have put together that they can go up to this place in Alaska and do what they do in this movie. There are no characters that carry over or anything like that. None of the people in this little series show up in this movie. It's all just like these people trying to kind of fight off the vampires because they have cracked the code that these vampires are going to go to Alaska and do what they do in this movie. That's it. So I wouldn't say it was a waste of time. It's kind of interesting time capsule kind of thing from 2007, but beyond that, I wouldn't recommend it.
Quite as effective as a precursor to the movie, the way that I can't remember the name of it, but that Blair Witch documentary they put out right before the movie.
Yeah,
that which was so popular and really helped the movie, I think, or whatever. Yeah, this was like not that, I guess.
Yeah, this is the direct opposite. I don't even remember that. Now, yeah, this is the direct opposite, and honestly, like, I don't know how many people would have watched this other than the hardcores, right? Like, you would have been hardcore. Yeah. You would have been a hardcore horror hound, you know, to even go seek this out back in 2007 to watch this, you know, and be ready for this movie to come out. But regardless, it's a thing and it's out there. There was a sequel series. There was a sequel series that apparently got released in 2008 on FearNet I did not watch this, but it's called 30 Days of Night, Dust to Dust. And apparently it does pick up sometime after this movie. And I don't know if there's any characters from the movie in this, but it does play out sometime later. And it's a similar setup, like, it's like 7 to 8 episodes, brief episodes kind of cobbled together. So apparently that's a thing out there too. I think it might be on YouTube as well. That one's called 30 Days of Night, Dust to Dust. And then in 2010, there was an actual sequel movie called, which I've never seen, 30 Days of Night, Dark Days. And that was released October 4th, 2010. And that was a direct-to-video DVD Blu-ray release. That would be a video vortex thing if we were ever going to watch it. Right? Although we have kind of chopped out the 2000s, right, of video vortex. But that was a direct-to-video thing. Have either of you seen that? Do you recall?
No, I have not seen that either. But on a point though that you were talking about FearNet, I just happened to look that up just out of curiosity. So FearNet began on October 31st, 2006 on VOD. It ended July 30th of 2014.
Now there you go. So it's been dead for 10 years, and we're just now exhuming the corpse. Yeah. I guarantee you some holding company bought some holding company that bought another company or something that owns whatever the hell FearNet had, right? And this would probably be lumped into that. I don't know the lineage, but it is on YouTube. I did find it, as of the recording of this, it is on YouTube if you want to go check it out. And I haven't seen that sequel, although that's probably, it is on DVD and Blu-ray, but I'm assuming it's streaming out there somewhere if you want to go check that out. But at some point, maybe I'll get around to it. I don't know. I'll probably just wait until we watch it on the show at this point. I've waited this long, right? I might as well hold off and wait until we have to watch it for the show.
I didn't expect anything out of the first one when it first came out, and I was pleasantly surprised by it. Like I said, I didn't see it in the theater, unfortunately. But the second one, I I don't expect anything out of it. And I don't know. It's like you said, I think I just wait. I expect that one to be as good. But maybe it'll be surprised too. So who knows?
Yeah,
I never read any reviews or anything on that sequel.
I have no high hopes that it would be very good at all. All right, so this movie was directed by David Slade. I didn't really recall much from him, so I looked it up, and he's best known for he directed the movie Hard Candy, and Tiana, for You, he directed the Twilight Saga Eclipse in 2010. So that was just a few years after this movie. Actually, I should have said Smoke That's For You. One of your favorite installments in the Twilight Saga, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. Actually, that one you mentioned before, I know Tiana's seen it. I'm pretty sure I've never seen it still. But Hard Candy, well, I guess that was his first movie. Maybe
no.
I don't know.
Well, it could have been. Now he had done a lot of, if I recall, he'd done a lot of shorts and music videos and stuff. I think he was more of a music video guy.
Oh, okay.
Believe it or not, before this, like he had done a lot for like Fatboy Slim. Back in the late 90s and early 2000s, Stone Temple Pilots, POD, Muse, bands like that, System of a Down.
I wonder if he did the one with Christopher Walken, the Fatboy Slim video with Christopher Walken.
I don't think so. It's a music video called Everybody Needs a 303 Pig Boy version. I have no recollection of that at all. But I do remember the Christopher Walken video.
Yeah.
Kind of looking back real quick, it looks like it might have been his first. Yeah, it might have been his feature debut, Hard Candy, because like everything else it looks like was music videos or shorts.
Okay. Yeah.
Wait, Hard Candy, the one with what's your name?
That's what I was talking about. I know you've seen it, and I know it was a sleeper hit kind of thing. I think when that movie came out, it did a lot of good criticism and everything. I just never saw it back then, or I still haven't seen it.
Yeah, he immediately followed up Hard Candy with 30 Days of Night, and then the Twilight Zone. Yeah, that's what I feel like if I'm watching it. The Twilight Saga, Eclipse. And then ever since then, though, probably because of Twilight, he's done mostly like episodes of TV shows and stuff. Like
that one was the weakest in a lot of people's eyes, the Eclipse one, but it kind of wasn't his fault either because
that's just the story.
The one girl got swapped out. The redhead got swapped out for Ron Howard's daughter.
Ah.
So
what was the move there? Like I have no knowledge of that. What was the move there? Was that just to get some name value in there? Or?
the redhead that was in the first and second one, I don't remember what her name is, but she leaked stuff.
Wow.
So she got in trouble and got fired.
Yeah, so fuck you. We can go get a bigger name.
Yeah.
We'll go find a bigger redhead, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he did episodes of Breaking Bad, 5 episodes of Hannibal, handful of things, and then he did some one episode of Black Mirror, and then he directed Black Mirror Bandersnatch, which I think that was like a kind of a Black Mirror movie, if I recall. So yeah,
I think that was. I mean, we haven't seen it yet, but isn't that the one's kind of like a, for lack of a better epithet for it, was it like a choose your own adventure type episode where you get to do this, go this way, or choose this, you go here or whatever. Yeah,
I think you're right. And most recently, last year, he directed the movie Dark Harvest, which it seems like I remember hearing a couple of decent things about that, but I never did see it. So,
oh my gosh, that's so good.
Yeah, there you go. So that's David Slade. So
watch it during Halloween.
So really, it sounds like just going through that. If he's got nothing to do with Twilight, thumbs up. You put him in that. You put him in that universe. Fuck him, right? But anyways, this was written by, of course, Steve Niles gets credit because he's the one that wrote the original miniseries comic. But Stuart Beatty and Brian Nelson, worked on the screenplay. And from what I read in some of the background stuff was there were various versions of this thing that floated around for years. It took them 2 or 3 years to finally come to a place where this is what they got on the screen. So it would have been interesting to see what other versions there were of this, because apparently they had to go back and make it somewhat closer to the graphic novel. So it would have been interesting to see what direction they were trying to go at first. Yeah. They had to bring it back around to the graphic novel, right? But it stars Josh Hartnett as Eben. He's the town sheriff. Melissa George is Stella. They're kind of, are they married or I think so?
Yeah,
kind of
married.
Estranged. Yeah.
I think they're separated, right?
They were getting separated, yeah.
Which I don't remember them ever really getting into to explain why they were. I guess it doesn't matter, right, in the grand scheme of things.
No, I don't. They kept talking about having a conversation about what we need to talk. Or other people knew. Other people didn't know. They wanted to know what was going on with it. Like his friend Billy or whatever, the guy that she was gonna stay with him as a wife right now. But yeah,
it just seemed like they were setting that up to be like, this is going to be part of the story, but then it's never really part of the story.
Yeah, just why all the stuff shit goes down with the vampires, and they never get a chance.
That part is completely understandable, right? The situation they find themselves in, but it just seems like if you're going to take this much effort to set it up in the story, there needs to be some type of payoff, which there wasn't. But whatever, that's just minor details and story structures. Danny Houston is Marlowe; he's the lead vampire. Ben Foster as the Stranger; he's the, what would you call him? The Renfield of the situation here?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Well, now it makes sense because he has that New Orleans accent.
Oh yeah.
There you go.
I kept thinking about his accent. Like, why has he got this accent? Yeah. I mean, they're making it a point for him to have. So I wonder. You don't remember though if he was in that?
No, he absolutely was not. I would remember that.
Was not.
He was not. But like I said, the way they set it up was like there was this group of people that kind of almost like computer hackers that found out that there were plans for this group of vampires to go to Alaska. So really, that whole story is about the vampires taking out. Because remember, even in this movie, the vampires are. They point out a number of times that the vampires do well to hide their existence. Right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what's happening in that. It's like there's a couple people that know about them, and they're ready to blow the cover off or whatever, and then like the vampires have to come and take them out so they can go do what it is what they want to do. So that all makes sense. And like I didn't even really connect that New Orleans dot until you said that, Tiana. But that's probably exactly what that is. Like maybe he came from there. He was the one that set it up and got them. Because really in the movie, all you see is that ship, right? Which I assume that means they're on that ship, correct?
Yeah.
And then, here they come into the town once it hits dark. But
who was? Oh, well, right, because it's just like slipping my mind. Who was on the ice when the ship was there, looking at the ship?
That was that guy.
That guy, the guy that we were talking about.
Yeah,
right? Okay, so
the Stranger. Yeah. I assume that means the vampires must have been on the ship and he was taking care of them on the ship until it got there. And then once the 30 days of night kick in, that's when they come off the ship and raise hell, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's his job to go into this town and set up the buffet.
Yeah.
Although when you come down and think of it too, like this place only has 100 and some odd people in it. You would think that they would know an out-of talent, like where the hell did this guy pop up from?
Yeah. Look, I love the premise of this, and we'll get into it in just a second. I love the premise of this, but man, once you stop and think about it, you can poke a lot of holes in this.
Yeah. There's a few other things that maybe it'll come back to my mind when I.
Oh, trust me, it'll come back up because I got a few things I want to talk about here.
It's intermission, it's intermission. It's intermission, it's intermission. Ice cream, candy, lemonade too. And there's a hot dog waiting for you.
The popcorn's popping and it's ready to go. You know all the great food is stealing the show.
Get up out your seat and get yourself a tasty treat down at the snack bar. Snack bar.
For you, the listeners of the All-American Spook Show podcast, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. So I just went on over to audible.com and I typed in 30 Days of Night to see what will pop up. And it's, believe it or not, we actually found something because, like, we were thinking maybe there wouldn't be something because it's a graphic novel, right? And Audible, those two don't really jive that much, you wouldn't think, but apparently it does. 30 Days of Night by Steve Niles, Ben Temple-Smith, R.S. Belcher. It's adaptation. Number of narrators, so I guess it's kind of like a Audible play version of it. It's only on Audible, and it is just over an hour long. And this was released in 2017, so that would be an interesting listen to see the differences between, say, the movie and this, right? Because I would assume that they're just kind of lifting straight from the graphic novel and how that would play out. So with all the,
and I guess that must be descriptive. I mean, because it's a graphic novel, you pretty much have to have the images with the words to make sense of it. So I don't know how an audio version of the graphic novel would play, but I wouldn't mind listening. I would like to listen to it.
Yeah, maybe there's maybe there's like a narrator with like kind of a teleplay kind of thing going on, like an old radio play type situation going on here. I don't know, but it'd be interesting to listen to. But yeah, there's a number of. I didn't really see anything else 30 Days of Night related on here, but that one enough. It should be enough to go use your credit for that one, right? It would be for me. So if you want to go use that for that, go to audibletrial.com/spookshow. Again, that's audibletrial.com/spookshow for your free audiobook. So yeah, that might actually be worth digging out and listening to. But I'm going to hop on back over to IMDb and click on plot
now. Would
summary.
That be an Audible 30 Days of Night trial?
Yeah,
30 days midnight stream.
It's a 30-day trial, but at night, you can do whatever you want with it. It's up to you.
Right.
Yeah, I've got the plot summaries here on IMDb. I've got the brief, the one sentence one that we usually get, and then we got longer ones here, so I guess I'll pick the longest one, but I'll go with the short one first. After an Alaskan town is plunged into darkness for a month, it is attacked by a bloodthirsty gang of vampires. Really, that's what this movie is. It's pretty simple, really. I just think in premise, though, it's, with vampires in a place that literally doesn't have daylight for a month. It's a great setup.
Yeah,
right?
That whole concept is, I guess it was Steve Niles or whoever, whether it was Steve Niles or whoever planted the bug in his ear about it. That's a fantastic concept.
Yeah.
For a vampire movie.
And I think I had seen, and I'll read the longer description here in just a second, but I think I had seen something, maybe it was, I caught a little bit of the featurettes that were on the Blu-ray. And I think it was Steve Niles that said that he had read something about this place in Alaska that this happened, and it piqued his interest, and he went from there. So it was literally like just the fact that this does happen. There's a certain place where they don't have the sun for however long it is, and then he just kind of took the idea from there. So that's where it came from. This one was submitted on IMDb by Claudio Carvola, our old friend Claudio from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. He must just sit around, this guy, and just do nothing but submit synopses. I mean,
I want the story. We need to do a spotlight.
Yeah, on Claudio Carvola. All right, here it is. In Barrow, Alaska, 70% of the population of 500 and some dwellers travel on the day of the last sunset, since the town will stay alone for the next 30 days without sunlight. Sheriff Eben Olson and Deputy Billy Kitka find several cell phones burned on the road. Then they receive a call from the local caretaker saying that all his sled dogs have been slaughtered. Later, Eben finds the operator of the cell tower decapitated. He arrests a troublemaker drifter, and the stranger frightens him by saying, "They are coming, and the locals will be dead." Soon, Eben discovers that the town is under siege by a gang of bloodthirsty vampires, and with a few survivors, they hide in an empty attic, waiting for the next sunrise. So, yeah, that's a pretty good description, honestly, of the events of what's going on here in the movie. Now, where I was talking about a few minutes ago about poking holes or whatever, like that, I love the premise. I do, and I've said it a number of times, and I really do, and I think it's cool. But, like, it's an all-you-can-eat buffet that they kind of run through really quick, right? It's fairly limited, right? I think that's the part that bugs me. It's like, what did they say? It was like population of 132 or something like that. It said it on the sign.
152? Well, I remember
Whatever
when he was putting it on the sign. I'm pretty sure it said 152.
Okay, 152. Like, they seem to mow through most of that pretty damn quick, right? Like, you would think, like, wouldn't you calm down a little bit?
Yeah, you think you would keep it on. I mean, you got 30 days. You could keep your supply going.
Yeah.
You know, for a while.
And
also, you could keep the suspicions down a lot longer.
Exactly. And there's like what, probably there's about a dozen or so of them, right? Vampires. So.
Yeah. Yeah, they mow through 100 and some odd people, probably. You know, because the town is pretty much cut down to just a handful in a short amount.
I think
in one night.
Yeah, it comes down to like pretty quickly. It comes down to like there's less than 10 people. Pretty fucking quick. So like, I don't know. It seems like they kind of blow their load a little bit, but like.
That's true.
It seems also.
Now, I can't speak to the graphic novel over there because, like I said, it's been so long that I don't remember what the time frame was in the novel as far as when they feed. And that, like if it was just as fast of a slaughter or whatever, you know, I don't remember that necessarily. I do remember another character though, and I don't remember his name, but that wasn't part of this group that was talking about how they. You know, they need to keep a down low profile kind of thing, and this is something that could like set off. It was kind of an antagonist within to the protagonist of the other vampires, sort of. You know,
yeah,
the one trying to keep things from getting too out of hand or whatever. So, but that character wasn't in the movie.
Yeah, a little bit like a vampire civil war kind of fighting over the group kind of thing, control of the group. Yeah, but
kind of, or you know, just that somebody who was like more wary of them blowing their cover, so to speak. You know, worried about, you know, they've gone so long with humanity not believing in vampires anymore that if they do something too crazy that they'll start being hunted again. Yeah. So, but they didn't have that character here.
Then there's that side of it that it seems like they wouldn't want to completely kill the golden goose here, right? Like they have found that, because they even say like, man, we should have come here ages ago, right? When the vampires are talking to one another. Like once you have found this place and you like, holy shit, this is like a golden corral for vampires, right? It seems like you wouldn't want to fuck that up. Wouldn't you want to just kill, like you said, a few in secret and then kind of find a place to hole up and then come back next year kind of thing or something, you know? They literally just run through the supply in like a fairly short amount, or I guess in 30 days, they run through the supply and then burn the house down. So they can never come back here.
Yeah, or like you said, literally, pretty much they run through most of the supply that one night, and then the rest of the 30 days they're trying to track down the few remaining people. So that, and I guess that's, you know, that character I talked about where he was kind of like, you know, hey, we don't need to, you know, make ourselves too aware or whatever. I guess that's kind of like what they were all sort of rolling themselves into after they killed those other people. Well, we can't let any get away, or they're going to know about, you know, us or whatever. So the rest of the movie, the rest of the 30 days is them trying to track down the survivors, right?
Yeah, yeah. And it really, it's a fairly simple plot as far as even the way the movie plays out. Like, that's why I don't think, if I have one beef with it, it's that the movie runtime is probably a little too long. Like, I think the pacing is fine. It's just that an hour 53 is probably a bit too much. For when you really think about it, not a lot happens here. It's like you set up the backstory, you get some character development, you set up the backstory of the people that live there, you know, the ones you care about. Then the Nighttime comes and the vampires act pretty quickly. Then there's the massacre. And then, like you said, a good hour or so of this is just, let's follow around this 6, 7, 8 people that have survived that massacre, that they're trying to survive the month, essentially.
Yeah.
And then it ends, the thing that we're about to get into, the ending of it happens, and then that's it. So, like, I think that could have been an hour and a half. Like, it's probably about 20 minutes too long.
I don't know. I think it like builds tension now.
It does, and a lot of that is the character
the
development.
grandpa, the dad that had the dementia. Could you imagine that?
Yeah, exactly. Having dealing with kids and dealing with like elderly and stuff in this situation. Yeah. And
speaking of kids,
yeah. You might have already had a note about that kid.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. Now wait, now they said that they didn't. There was a point in the movie where he's like, "Don't turn them," right? Like they didn't want to necessarily create more vampires here, but they did end up creating more vampires. But she wasn't one of them, right? Like I guess she kind of came.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I think she kind of came along.
Why was she a child with a tattoo?
And I meant to go back and pause it. It was so fast that I couldn't exactly tell.
Weird.
I didn't catch the tattoo, but that's hilarious.
Brian.
Oh wait, I was 100% right. All right. Okay. Well, this is offline when me and Tiana were watching the movie.
Yeah.
We were watching the movie, and it was so fast because of the way that the vampires attack and everything in this movie is edited. So they're voracious and it's fast. Even the little girl vampire part, whenever they discover her and she gets up and she says, "Oh, I'm tired of playing with you," or that's that scene, and she runs after them. It's edited so fast that you almost wouldn't even see it if you weren't really like. I saw 2 tattoos really quick, and I meant to go back after we were done watching it, but we were so late in watching it, we pretty much went right from that into doing the podcast. I didn't go back, but the quick flash, one of the tattoos looked to me like, and I don't know how many people know this band. It's a German industrial band called Einstein's Neubauten.
Yeah,
and it's a symbol that they have, which is it's from a petroglyph, from like a cave drawing of like a stick figure human body with like a head with one dot in the center. It's supposed to represent apparently like the sun or soul or whatever, right? Why this little girl, and I just looked it up and Googled the little girl's tattoos on 30 Days a Night, and it shows a picture of her, and it is that Einstein's Neubauten tattoo for some reason. Why she would have this? Is it a reference to the band? I mean, it's got to be a reason because she's a little girl, and I'm sure they put this tattoo on her. She does this little 12-year-old, 13-year-old, whatever girl. I'm sure doesn't have an Einstein's Neubauten. Her parents weren't that cool, I don't think.
It looks like it was painted on her arm.
Yeah, it's like a Sharpie almost or something. Yeah, the picture I'm looking at, but it very much was the exact symbol I thought it was. And on the other arm, I thought it was a cross of some kind, maybe even an upside down cross.
It has to have something to do with their background, maybe the vampires.
And that, folks, is why we have the professor here on the All American Spook Show, because who the hell is going to put those puzzle pieces together other than Professor Smoke?
I just wonder if it had some kind of link with the comic, I guess.
Maybe. I mean, like there might. I haven't read it, so there might be some things like that. Weird little things. It's not unusual in comics for stuff like that, and maybe they just wanted to reference that as much as they could, little Easter eggs and stuff. But yeah, I mean, like, overall, man, I think the setup is nice. The execution is right. Yeah, I mean, it's weird. I didn't even notice that.
It's hard to see in this photo. I know none of our listeners can hear it because this is a audio podcast, but I'm showing the image to Josh of it. It's just like, it's perplexing me now that I'm going to have to look this up afterwards, because why does this little girl vampire have this symbol from this German industrial band, which their symbol came from a cave drawing of petroglyphs from back in, whatever, Bronze Age or whatever, or well, pre-Bronze Age, I guess. But I don't know. It's just very odd to me now, and I gotta dig into this deeper.
Nate, it is odd you bring her up, because I thought it was odd in the movie with her in particular. Whenever the vampires are talking to each other, they have like their own little language that they're speaking.
It's Arabic.
Yeah,
Aramaic.
It was something they actually came up with, right? They married a couple of languages together, and it's like a whole new language, basically. Yeah. Except for her, like she turns around and she's like, "I'm tired of I'm tired of playing with this. I want a new toy, whatever the hell she says. In perfect, like, American English. Like,
Yeah.
it was just kind of weird. It's like, whoa, what? And I guess that was the point. It was like, it's disturbing to see a little girl, as a vampire and doing all these things, right? Almost as disturbing as the way they had to take her out.
Yeah.
Like how often, we don't see this very often, even in horror movies where they're taking out a kid like that, right? But they did it.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, I think that the execution of the movie as well, it's just, I don't know, like maybe they just spent, I guess, Tiana, to your point, you have to have that character development to get you to care about, like, I guess if you shave some of that out, you would care less. And then, the stakes are lower.
When it comes to the ending.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess that's where that's at. But, I don't know. It just, and I'm not knocking it for it. It just seemed like you could have gotten to the same point, which is a little less time, but that little girl, that one threw me, like, cause it just that and the, what the hell is that chainsaw tractor? Is that a real thing? What the fuck is that thing?
It's, cuts through the snow and the ice up in Alaska.
I guess the ice more so
for people to travel.
Yeah,
I guess that makes sense. But like, it was a nice, and you knew when you saw that at the beginning of the movie, yeah, that's coming back.
Yeah, they definitely. I mean, at least it was used not just to introduce it, but also as a major plot device because it's the reason why she gets stuck there.
Yeah,
because she was trying to leave on the airplane to get there in time. But this thing just, because it's cutting the ice on the roadway or whatever it's doing, runs right into her truck or whatever and disables it. And she has to get somebody from town, ends up being Billy to come and drive her to the airport or to the airstrip, whatever. I don't know. It's really necessarily an airport but whatever case, the plane's already taken off, right? And then she's stuck there for 30 days. So, but then, it comes back later and it's going to just because it's such an awesome piece of equipment.
When you're about,
and then
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say that guy that uses it on the vampires later.
Yeah.
Goes to blow himself up. Doesn't even blow himself up.
How the hell did he manage that?
Somehow, I don't know, but he had a box of 10, 12 sticks of dynamite that they're literally right between his legs on the ground, and he lights a flare and drops it in this box of 10,
standing
12.
on it. Like he's standing on top of it, and it didn't fucking blow him apart. It just burned him.
Meanwhile, burning, flaming charcoal vampires are jumping out the window and everything, but he's just blown out. I guess I don't know where out the window or whatever.
I guess he survived it and then just jumped out the window, and then then they.
Now, I don't know what the point of that was, and like I said, I can't compare it to the graphic novel, the character, or anything that's been so long. But why not just have him die? Go out his own way, and it was just so that the vampire could deliver that line,
Yeah, and then step on his head or whatever. It's just so so you have the kind of cruel moment, kind of a cool
that's why.
Yeah. I also find it funny too, and I was thinking about this when I was watching it. You ever notice they do this in a lot of movies. There's always the I call him the old crazy prospector character. There's always some survivalist guy that lives up on the mountains by himself or something. But then when the shit goes down, he's the guy you want to be with, kind of character.
Yeah. That was him, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that was him. Yeah, they played into that again. There's always one of those guys he's the old nut. He's the old nut that lives on the other side of town by himself, but he's exactly the dude you want in the situation.
Oh yeah. Because he showed before that whole chainsaw ice cutter thing, he showed up to the rescue of the husband and wife in the truck, right? When it gets flipped over.
Yeah.
And by the vampires flipping it over or whatever. And then he comes in, they're about to get jerked out and eaten. And he comes in with a bulldozer that time or a snowplow bulldozer and just takes out about 5 or 6 of them, right? Slams them into this the wall or whatever.
Yep. And then that's when they take him out.
Mentioning that was a very cool gore scene whenever I think he blasts the one vampire and it lands on the chainsaw, gets cut in half at the waist.
Yeah, I mean, there's some really good gore scenes and stuff in this. I mean, some of it is very 2007-ish with the CGI. Certain parts didn't age very well, but then there are other parts that I felt aged just right. It's a mixed bag. But that massacre, when they kind of sun goes down and they take over the town, and I love that overhead shot
Yes.
Where, you know,
when they're like hitting the snow and blood splatters and all that stuff, but it's up in the air or whatever. Yeah.
And there's people with shotguns just blasting, and you know, it's just carnage left and right. But it's just kind of this steady overhead drone type of shot that's just stays over it for a few minutes. It's a great shot.
It is a great shot. It's a great scene, but it definitely makes it hard to do a body count, which is what we're trying to do.
Oh yeah! Oh god!
We're trying to do a kill count for it as it was happening, and that was just like, oh fuck, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just, we're literally counting. Those 12, 13, 14, 15, and then it's like way up in the air. I don't know. There's all kinds of people falling on the ground. I don't know if there's zombies or vampires or what.
Tiana, I don't envy your job here with the kill count, but then again, you could make it pretty easy on yourself and just say, well, there was 152 people in that town.
Yeah.
Minus how many ever survived at the end. Throw in a few extra and come up with a number.
Yeah, they definitely made it easy for you because they established at the beginning of the movie 152 on that sign, and then just like you said, subtract however many survivors.
You know, you see at least 140 something people get it here. You can just start there, right? That was a great shot, and you mentioned him, Eben's partner, his that guy's name was Billy.
Yeah.
When he starts to turn, right?
Oh yeah. That was probably an amazing gore scene. Also, though, probably the most disturbing. Yeah. You know, because it's in front of everybody. And it was his friend and partner, and he does it like in front of the eyes of everybody right there, and everything. It's like a reality check moment for all of them. I think.
Yeah. And right before that, right before they have to take him out because he starts to turn, when he throws that other vampire into that meat grinder or whatever the hell that thing. Well, it's a metal grinder, right? Yeah. That's another one. It's like, oh fuck. Dude, I'm thinking like, all right, just line them up. Just line the vampires up and just throw them into this fucking thing. What are we doing here?
Problem solved.
Yeah. Game over. Of course, it's not that easy, right? It wouldn't be a proper movie. It's never that easy. But yeah, that would have been pretty good. But yeah, that whole scene, holy shit. Brutal.
Yep.
They burned down the vampires. Essentially like, all right, well, this went to shit. We got pretty much everything we wanted, but this thing's went to shit. Let's burn the town down. So they pretty much burn it down. Although there's still a handful of them surviving. And Eben, essentially, like, he comes to the conclusion, like, well, the only way I'm going to be able to end this is if I become one myself. Fight fire with fire, right? So he takes a syringe, pops some vampire blood inside of him and starts to turn. And then he goes out into the street and has the final showdown with Marlowe, you know, the head vampire. The other vampires kind of hang back and let Marlowe and Eben kind of have their fight. And it ends with Eben putting his fist through Marlowe's mouth out the back of his head. Then I get the other vampires just kind of back off. And then Eben is turning, but he hasn't turned completely yet because they've established throughout the movie there's this time period where, like, you know, you're becoming a vampire, but you're not fully there yet until, I guess, you know, at some point there's going to be a switch that flips, you know, and then blah, 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 you know, but until then, you're okay, you know. So he essentially makes it till the sun comes up because, of course, everything happens and is nicely tied up right before the sun comes up. And essentially that's how it ends, right? Eben is in his wife's, like, she's kind of holding him. He's in her arms, and the sun comes up and it burns him up, and she's just kind of staring blankly ahead. The end, right? That's the way it ends. So, there we have it. 30 Days of Night. Now, the one thing I didn't like about that ending was that, like, really it almost seemed like Eben's story arc where, you know, he's kind of the one that has to fall in the, like, somebody had to make the grand sacrifice to end this, right? He didn't really end anything, right?
Just that lead vampire. That's about the only thing he accomplished was killing that lead vampire. They're still around.
I guess they just went and hid somewhere until, you know, the next night, or, you know, whenever nightfall happens again. I don't know exactly how it works up there on the elbow of Alaska, but.
And I haven't read any of. I think there was some more graphic novel related things to this series, or more comics related to it. But I never read any other than the original one, and also never saw the sequel. So I don't know if those other vampires, the characters themselves, pop back up in the sequel. I guess maybe, but I don't. Yeah. I assume. But, you know, the 30 days of night are over now because the sun's up. So now I don't know. I don't know about the thing in Alaska now. Is it Now is it going to flip to where it's 30, like where it's the midnight sun sort of thing? Where,
and they're
right?
fucked. And maybe that's as far as you need to read into it. Maybe like, well, the sun came up, they're fucked. They had nowhere to hide.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's as simple as that. But.
Like I said, I haven't read any further, and I haven't seen any of that movie, so maybe there's an explanation there as to what happens to that group of vampires. It just seemed like he comes to the conclusion, the only way we're going to end this is if I become a vampire and go kick this dude's ass. Well, you did that, and you didn't kill but one vampire. Because unfortunately,
there's still a dozen vampires.
You know.
So I don't know. That part was kind of, to me, I mean, I guess it's a proper little ending, right? How do you end this? It just seemed like story-wise, it's like, dude, just hold out for a few more hours. The sun's coming up. You don't need to do this. You know, he does it, becomes a vampire, and then has to burn to a crisp. You know, but at least he took out the one guy. You know, I don't know. Not as satisfying as I would like, but you know, we're poking holes here, right? But anyways, yeah, that's 30 Days of Night. So I guess since I brought it to the table, I'll go ahead and give my final thoughts and my rating. It's a solid flick. It's definitely one of my favorites of the 2000s. I mean, there's some really good ones. You know, we mentioned some of those earlier in the show. This is one that I saw it in the theater. I maybe watched it a couple more times before this, but it has been a while since I watched it. So other than like those little things that I can poke a hole in, it's still a solid flick. It's a fun flick. I love the premise. And it just seems that like their motivation should be to slow down. You know, but looking at the whole picture. But for us as movie viewers, at least we get that cool massacre scene and lots of cool shit, in the movie. But story-wise, it would seem like, man, they got a great situation here that they just kind of shit all over real quick, but whatever. I'm overthinking it. Right? I'm going to say, and I probably would have given it higher back in 2007, but, upon review and thinking about it and time and everything, I'm going to say 3 3/4 stars. That's where I'm going to land with it. So, Tiana, we'll let you go next.
I really enjoy this one because of I think the story's good and the actors are very good. I think it was a very good choice to pick Josh Hartnett. And
something that didn't, and this will be a theme that we'll talk about here in a second. Something that didn't end with ULA at the end. Dracula, Blankula, whatever.
Oh yeah.
If nothing else, there's that, right?
Yeah, I give it 3.5.
And Professor, what do you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with you that it's one of the better ones of that time period, especially because I can't think of a whole lot during that time period, other than, like I said, what we mentioned earlier with the whole, Dark Castle and the certainly heads and tails above the House of Wax remake.
Oh, God. Yeah, well, I just took a shit earlier, and it's better than House of Wax. So I recommend that experience far more.
Yeah, thanks to this podcast, I was able to finish House of Wax. Or let me rephrase that: I had to go back and finish the House of Wax because, as I joked about before, I think I watched like however long of it, some odd minutes of it back in the day when it was on video, and then this movie sucks, and then stopped it immediately, took it back. I'd rented it. Ended up going in the States back to the video store, and I never touched it again until that episode of the podcast.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, this is a heads and tails above that. As I mentioned, I love the setting because I love any kind of claustrophobic setting, but especially if it's set in somewhere that's like icy, frozen wasteland, like The Thing or this movie, any number of movies that are set in a location like that. The vampires, we didn't really talk about this, folks. For people who haven't ever seen this or read the graphic novel, they're vicious vampires. They aren't your typical two fangs, poking the skin and sucking the blood. Now these vampires that have an entire mouthful of fangs and they rip your throat out and then take your head off because they don't want to make you a vampire. So they try to anyway.
They have kind of a unique, weird look too. Like their eyes are kind of their faces are shaped. Yeah, they're kind of shaped weird though. This like their nose and just their bone structure or whatever. They get like weird faces. And the teeth aren't like two fangs kind of thing. It's like you said, it's like a mouthful, almost like shark teeth.
Like all their teeth are pointed, or fangs, or whatever. Yeah. And they jut out when they want them to.
Yeah, like The Simpsons or something. Like, ugh.
Yeah. And then the gore, which we'll get to on the gore score, it was another plus for me as well, for all of us.
Absolutely.
Certainly from that time period. As we talked about it, even though it's a mix of, as you would expect from that time, CG and practical effects, I don't think that the CG took away. You know, it wasn't like it was more one than the other. So I don't think that the CG took away from the movie too much. I mean, there's some obvious scenes of CG, but it was fine. That was fine enough. And maybe this was like I said, I haven't been able to compare it because I haven't read it. But I do remember, of course, loving the graphic novel more so than the movie, even when I did see the movie and stuff. So maybe it's, if you have people that haven't read the graphic novel, see this movie first. I would almost recommend that maybe, because then you won't have any sort of conscious biases going into it. But yeah, I still stand by the fact that I think the graphic novel is better. I think I'm not going to go low, but I'll probably go lower than y'all a little bit. And I'm going to go 3.25, which is still a good rating for me.
Yeah, absolutely. So that gives us right now, without Donnie and Will's ratings, we're sitting at exactly 3.5 stars out of 5. So obviously we highly recommend it. And we encourage you to go check it out. Now, as of the recording of this, there was no place to stream it without like renting it or buying it that I saw. So like, if you don't own a copy of it, you're probably gonna have to go rent it or buy a copy. But if you like this kind of thing, honestly, I recommend you just go buy it, because this is the kind of movie you're gonna like. If you like vampire movies, gory horror movies, you're gonna enjoy it. So if you haven't seen it and you're looking for that, go check it out. Go buy a copy of it. What the hell's wrong with you? For all I know, it might be a hard one to find these days.
What's that? Go ahead.
I said it might be a hard one to find for all I know these days. I have no idea. You know, like,
you mean on DVD?
Yeah, DVD or Blu-ray or something. Because I'm kind of like, you know, if there's something like this I like, I go buy it, and then I kind of put it out of sight, out of mind, and then I'll find out 10 years later, oh yeah, that thing's been out of print for 6 years and it's hard to find. So I have no idea.
Now this one is not too bad because you were going to probably say what I'm going to say. So
we actually just seen it not long ago. Used Blu-ray for $5.
Okay. Yeah, and you could probably go to your local Goodwill or something and track it down. I wouldn't think it'd be too hard, but
yeah, you might need to do that. But certainly, if you have like this might be regional, but I mean like a Second and Charles, which is a store that deals in secondhand merchandise, I'm sure you could probably a good chance you'll find it in a place like that, because we were on vacation and we're gonna watch some of the movies when we're in Missouri or whatever. And we didn't take the 30 Days a Night copy with us. Then we realized, because we thought we'd just get it on streaming, we realized we'd have to pay for it. I'm like, what? We already own it.
Son of a bitch. Unfortunately.
So we were at a secondhand place in Missouri and saw it there for like $3, right? $5. But we didn't buy it because I think we figured, well, we already own it, and we'll just wait until. I mean, although that would have been as cheap as the streaming. so yeah, you can't find it out there in certain places for like $5 or so, I'm sure. So it is out there on DVD still.
Well, if you don't own it, I highly recommend going and tracking down a copy and buying it if you're going to watch it, since it's not like really available on Netflix. Go buy it.
And the irony of that whole story was that we almost had to buy it or rent it or whatever on streaming anyways, because we put the copy in our which one did we put in? The Xbox, and it said won't play this. Whatever. Can't play it.
I actually played.
So I had to break out the PS5 and then it worked.
Yeah,
I actually played my Blu-ray on my Xbox One and it played just fine. So I don't know. I don't know if you guys have the same Blu-ray that I have, but
I don't. Do we have it on? No, we got it on DVD. Yeah,
but it did play in the PS5. Yeah. So.
And it wasn't like it was smudged. It was like pristine looking. Scratches, no smudges. Just whatever reason, it didn't want to play in Xbox. But no.
Well, Donnie's not here, as you know, to give us the connections from the crypt, so we don't have those, unfortunately. But we do have. All right, Tiana, what number did you land on?
It's the high one. 117.
Yeah, well, that sounds about right.
That was including the townspeople and the vampires.
Mm-hmm.
Because at first I was like, I feel like it would be more, but if you look at towards the end of the movie, when Eben saves the town, there are more people that come out.
And I was like, wait a minute. Now, it looked like there was only about maybe for the most part, 5 or 6 people in that last, little bit that are still there. And then I noticed that when Eben does that and takes out Marlowe or whatever, and then there's the final moment where the vampires kind of slink away, and then all of a sudden people start appearing.
Yeah.
Where these motherfuckers been the last month? Chicken shit.
I guess, they don't want to take any more time out of the story to figure. I guess they just figure that, okay, well, at the end of the movie, we'll have all the other survivors that were holed up here, there, everywhere, wherever, come out. So,
Well, so I guess,
but yeah, we were thinking
I
that
guess
was
with
low end.
taking that into account, that's 117 sounds about right. So, but that leads us to, let's talk about the kill reel.
Highlight kill.
All right, these are always, to me, good and bad problems to have. It's good for the gore score smoke. Bad when you're trying to come up with a highlight kill. But, and there's lots of good ones here. And specifically, you could just say that massacre scene, because it's an awesome, it's an awesome scene. But I think I'm going to go with his partner, Billy, turning, the whole, throws the vampire into the metal crusher. Then he turns around with his arm, gnawed off. He's screaming and turning into a vampire, and then he has to take an axe. And because I think that's the main way that they describe in this movie that you have to take out a vampire, right? You got to decapitate him.
Yeah. And that actually is some lore that goes back to, even Dracula. I mean, the stake through the heart and decapitation.
Yeah.
People forget about that, I think, sometimes, about the decapitation part. Is actually part of vampire lore going way back then. So
I'm going to go with that as the highlight kill. Him having to hack off Billy's head. I mean, it's fucking brutal. It's not like whack and then they cut from it. No, they show him take a couple blows on this dude's head, and his head kind of halfway hanging off of him. So, it's brutal in that manner that you're actually seeing it play out. So I'm going to go with that for the highlight kill. But we didn't that before we get to the gore score. That was one thing we didn't really talk about as far as the conventional vampire spin in this one. That the sunlight hurts him. Obviously, that's the big point of this 30 Days of Night, right? So we know sunlight and we know decapitating, but they don't really address garlic, crosses, stakes through the heart and shit like that, right? So I don't know whether those things affect them or not, but there was no time in this movie to go there,
No.
And wasn't there some line about well, that shit hurt Bela Lugosi, but do we know if it works for it? Wasn't there a line in there somewhere?
Yeah, there was some line about Bela Lugosi, but I forget what it was in reference to exactly.
It was the head vampire they were talking about.
Yeah, so they didn't really get deep into the lore in this universe but we do know decapitation and sunlight. Those are the obvious ones here.
Gore score.
Oh yeah, it's a juicy one. We've been talking about it the whole podcast, but decapitations, throat rippings, hands gnawed off. What else? Chainsaw, ice machine, chopping zombie. I almost said zombies.
Yeah.
Chopping vampires. Oh yeah, that's another way, I guess. Apparently, I guess that vampire died. I mean, he wasn't decapitated, or is he just crawling around somewhere? His upper half is crawling around. But,
Are you talking about Marlowe?
No, the one that was on the chainsaw, ice chainsaw thing got blasted.
Yeah, maybe. Who the fuck knows?
Because like you said, there's the lore doesn't really get too specific other than that. But some of the vampires have their heads blasted off.
Yeah.
One hole blasted almost all the way through his head, where you see the back of his head and you see a hole through it or whatever. And obviously I guess that constitutes decapitation. Enough of his head was destroyed.
Yeah.
And then one gets his whole head blown up by a shotgun. That's pretty cool. Yeah, another good gore scene. So yeah, loads of gore, especially for 2007. So I think I'll have to go with I almost have to go with an 8 on the gore score, which is pretty high for hell. It's an R-rated movie too, right?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
I mean, that might be one of the high. I mean, we don't have these kind of stats or whatever, but that might be the highest gore score I've ever given to a movie that was rated R.
Well, I guess that's pretty much enough for this week. But the Sucky Summer continues. Obviously, if you haven't got the point of what the Sucky Summer is, we didn't really explain it off the top. All this summer, we've been talking about vampire movies, so we're going to continue that ride into next week. And next week, it's going to be cannon fodder. We actually found, with the help of Canon Film Guide Volume 1 and Volume 2 author, Austin Trunick, we actually found another Canon flick. This one, honestly, was probably more obvious than the first one we did. Remember, we kicked this whole thing off with Life Force back on Memorial Day. So,
yeah,
I didn't take the deep dive, but I couldn't think of anything right off the top of my head that Canon would have done that had anything to do with vampires. And luckily, Austin came to the rescue, and he found us one. We're going to be talking about Rockula. We're going to be talking about Rockula, a weird-ass movie that I think possibly only Canon could have made, right? So we'll get into that next week, and hopefully we'll have Donnie back. Who knows? So for Will and Donnie, who couldn't be with us, Tiana, Professor Smoke, I'm Josh. We are the All American Spook Show, and the Sucky Summer rolls on with Cannon Fodder and Rockula.
Please replace the speaker on its rack when you're ready to leave. Failure to do so will damage both the speaker and your car. We'll be grateful, and so will the patrons who follow you.